a lot of talk about black folks and slavery. For the record, enslaved Africans did not choose to be shackled, torn from their families, then bought and sold in the U.S. only to be tortured by slave owners. Some fought back. The first documented revolt was in 1663, when enslaved Africans joined forces with the white indentured servants. And the first documented all-black rebellion was in 1687. Here are a few other epic American slave rebellions that you should know about. At minimum, there were roughly 250 slave rebellions between 1619, when the first enslaved Africans were brought to the Americas, and 1865. First, let's chat about the New York City slave revolts. In 1708, there was a slave revolt in Long Island. 7 white people were killed and the insurgents were captured and executed. A few years later, in 1712, a group of over 20 armed Native Americans and enslaved Africans gathered in New York City and set fire to a slave owner's home. A few white dudes came to extinguish the fire but were attacked, and 9 of them were killed. Though the rebels fled, many were eventually caught and several were executed. In 1739, there was the Stono Rebellion, which started in South Carolina. This was the largest rebellion of the 13 colonies. Led by a man named Jemmy, about 20 slaves raided a store near the Stono River, where they killed the white store owners, leaving their decapitated heads in front of the store. Clearly, these rebels had a message to send. Eventually, the group grew to approximately 100 slave rebels, and they marched towards freedom in Florida while chanting liberty. Liberty. The slaves were able to hold off the English for over a week before colonists finally crushed the uprising. These uprisings came with a price. Stoner reinforced the idea that slaves needed to be controlled. Slave imports from Africa were put on hold, and the Negro Act of 1740 was passed, limiting the free rights of the enslaved. For example, slaves weren't allowed to be included. And lastly, one of the most well-known slave uprisings was Nat Turner's Rebellion. In 1831, minister enslaved Nat Turner rallied 6 slaves to rebel. Armed with hatchets and knives, the group murdered Turner's masters and the master's family. In 2 days, the group attacked more than a dozen homes, killing around 55 women. As the rebels continued to march, taking no prisoners, they continued to grow to over 70 slaves and headed towards Jerusalem. By the end of the rebellion, about 120 slaves were executed. Turner escaped and hid out for nearly 2 months, but was eventually caught, hanged, and enslaved. Because of slave rebellion, some states made it illegal for black folks to learn how to read and write. And we're only scratching the surface of how these consequences have rippled into the present day. Many of the enslaved were, dare I say, free thinkers, but those who didn't revolt weren't regarded as lesser than. They all lived and died during a time in which merely surviving was considered a miracle. Their silence was the reason why many of us are alive today.
What's up? I'm PJ with the. We want to bring you more series of videos like this.